I can remember not too long ago when we went to Uganda and we were trying to learn how to speak Luganda. And I didn't do that very well because I was afraid to go into the marketplace and start trying to talk to people because I was afraid of saying something silly. You know, there are some words that sound alike, which are
Yes, it's true.
have significant different meanings, you know? And then I didn't want to feel foolish like I looked stupid when they kept saying, because I don't hear well for one. And so when they would say those words, what did you say? What's the word for say that again? Can't remember even. Repeat that. Well, anyway. One of the snares, those snares that make us like, we think we're going to feel foolish, kind of keep some people in a box. Some people have a really great fear of that. And fortunately, I've gotten used to feeling foolish. Because as a middle school teacher, they used to ask you to do all kinds of things. You know, sometimes they would ask you to shave off half your beard. Sometimes they'd ask you to shave off your hair on a bet. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, but my mustache is gone. Yeah. I haven't had it for a long time. And one of those reasons it got cut a long time ago is because my wife was pregnant with our third child. We'd already had 2 boys, and the kids were, and we didn't go to have the test done or look at to what it was a boy or a girl or not. So the kids were asking me, Mr. Skuza, what do you think you're going to have? I said, man, it's a boy. It's a boy. Skuzas always have boys. We've already had 2 of them. We're going to have another boy. Guess what? They said, well, we think it's going to be a girl, and we want you to shave your mustache if you're not right. So, off it came. Well, this time it came off because it started to itch, and of course that little granddaughter of mine, somebody said while she was here, she would play with Jan, but she wouldn't play with me. You know, she had a fear of man. They said it might have been this mustache. And so, that was another good reason to cut it off. So that my granddaughter wouldn't be afraid of me. Okay? Well, you know what? We have all kinds of fears. Since I started working on this sermon, I found all kinds of definitions of fears. There's people that are afraid of chins. Can you imagine that? People that are afraid of pencils. People that are afraid of flowers. And then people are afraid of long words. And I wish I had written that down. But it was an extremely long word to describe what that word was. And I thought, why would they do that to people? If they're already afraid of words, why would they make a word that long to explain that phobia? Anyway, the fear of foolish. That's one of the snares. Is the fear of appearing foolish. Now, you know, in Scripture, it says this about the cross. It says the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. So when we go to share the gospel with some people, people don't understand it because they think it's foolishness. I mean, what person in their right mind would go kill himself for another person? And they don't believe that. You and I do because we recognize how that death on the cross changed our life. Salvation comes through it. You know, we need to be willing to look foolish for the sake of Christ. And the fear of man not only entraps us, it slows down. Sometimes it even stops the message of the gospel. That's what that letter I showed you was all about. That's what that was trying to, you know, they were trying to counteract people trying to stop you and I from saying what Jesus did for us. Well, the second thing is another snare is trying to impress people. Trying to impress people. This morning in the Sunday school class, they were talking about hospitality, and they were talking about reasons people weren't hospitable. And one of those came up was, we didn't want to invite somebody into our house because our house wasn't clean. Or it wasn't clean enough. It wasn't, it was clean, but it wasn't clean enough. It wasn't up, like when in the military, you have inspections, and the guy comes in with a white glove, and he goes. And my whole class of 50, if anybody got a demerit on those inspections, nobody got liberty on the weekend. Everybody had to stay in and clean and clean and clean and clean. So everybody was working their best. And so you didn't invite that guy into your room unless you knew that it was, as we call it, strapped. Whatever that word means. Some people get so caught up with trying to impress people. It drives them to do all kinds of things. I remember trying to impress my father. So I ran mile after mile after mile after mile after mile, trying to be as good as I could in the races and hope that my father would see, this guy really works hard. Anybody here do that? Have you done something, we got to buy new clothes so that we can go, when we go to an interview, that we will impress them with that. And really what they're going to be impressed by is your knowledge of what you're being asked to do.
Hippopotamonstrosis pedaleophobia.
Yeah, that's the word.
Wow.
Thank you, Robert. Well, some people have that overwhelming desire to be sort of applauded. Not only was I trying to get my dad to recognize what I was doing, but I wanted the applause of people too. I wish I could see that happen. But, the fear of man isn't so much a fear as it is a life centered around men, a life that is motivated by pride in how we appear in the eyes of men. I got to dress a certain way. I got to speak a certain way. I got to drive a certain car. All of those things, oftentimes to impress men, to impress people. Well, another way is to try to please people. Trying to please people can be a snare. Right now, we're in election time. And if you listen to the people that are speaking, every time they go someplace, they say something different to the group that they're speaking to. They're trying to please those people so they can get their votes. Does that make them act differently? Yeah. How does that do with us when we try to please people? It can be a real snare. It can be a trap for us. Sometimes we even change the gospel a bit so that it's not offensive to people. But when you tell the truth of the gospel, it's going to be offensive to people. Jesus said that he came to save people, but if they did what they did to him, do not expect any less if you do the same that Jesus did. There are going to be trials and tribulations throughout that, but so we can't necessarily please people. Paul wrote in Galatians 1:10, he was talking about this. He wrote to the Galatians of this fear of this man trap. He said, am I now seeking the approval of men or God, or am I trying to please man? If I were trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. King Saul, in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verses 21 through 26. In those verses, I'd like to read that to you. It says, but the people took some of the spoil. First of all, Saul was told that he was supposed to kill this group of people, kill everything, and he was supposed to destroy everything. But this is what happened. But the people took some of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the choicest things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. And Samuel said, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than the sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and insubordination is iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you as king. And then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I indeed transgressed the command of the Lord because I feared the people and listened to their voice. All of that. What was he afraid of? Was he going to lose his kingship? But, nonetheless, even as the king, he had a fear of man. Do you suppose any of those politicians are worried about losing their jobs?